The Dixon Gallery and Gardens celebrates its 40th anniversary in 2016. This look back at the last 4 decades of serving Memphis in the Mid-South honors the legacy of our founders and reintroduces the story of Dixon.
The Dixon Gallery and Gardens in Memphis first opened to the public in 1976. The Museum of Fine Art and Public Garden that Memphians know and love today is the legacy of Margaret and Hugo Dixon, 2 collectors of French Impressionist paintings, enthusiastic gardeners, and advocates of the arts. Their philanthropic vision, careful planning, and expansive cultural interests created the foundation for what would become known simply as the Dixon. As we retrace the 40 years that have advanced the Dixon Gallery and Gardens into the 21st century, longtime friends and supporters help tell the story of a young but accomplished institution envisioned and created by Hugo Dixon.
He created the foundation with the idea of building the Dixon, and I think you would just be astounded at what's here.
Mr. Dixon was very active in bringing the Metropolitan Opera to Memphis, for example. He was a cultured person and thought that our community would profit by culture and was instrumental in seeing that was done.
Hugo Norton Dixon was born in Southport, England on August 23, 1892. His father was a member of the cotton merchant firm Dixon Brothers on the Liverpool Cotton Exchange. In 1910, young Hugo joined the firm of McFadden and Company in Bremen, Germany, a subsidiary of Vast Cotton Concern in Philadelphia. When the First World War broke out in August 1914, Hugo Dixon was arrested as an enemy alien and interned in a civilian prison camp outside Berlin for the duration of the war. Shortly after the end of the war, he returned to England and the cotton business, but the experience in Germany during the war had changed him. In 1920, Hugo Dixon joined his older brother Roger in Dallas, and together they started the cotton export business, R.L. Dixon and Brother, and joined the Dallas Cotton Exchange. Thanks to their connections in England, the Dixon Brothers cotton business prospered in the 1920s. Meanwhile, Hugo had begun to court a young woman named Margaret Oates of Memphis, the daughter of another family in the cotton business. However, the budding romance nearly ended before it began, when on May 8, 1925, the steamer U.S. Norman capsized and sank on the Mississippi River, with young Margaret Oates on board. She was one of 32 people rescued by the quick work of Memphis hero Tom Lee that day. Less than a year later, on April 6, 1926, Hugo and Margaret married. In 1936, Hugo rejoined the McFadden firm and moved from Dallas to Houston as a general partner. 3 years later, the McFadden firm moved its headquarters to Memphis, and Hugo Dixon was offered the presidency of the company on the condition that he go there too. On August 1, 1939, Hugo and Margaret Dixon returned to Memphis, purchasing 17 acres at Park Avenue and Cherry Road. There, they began construction of a Georgian-style home, designed by the Houston architect John Staub, and laying out their gardens with the advice of Mr. Dixon's sister, Hope Crutchfield. The Dixons moved into their new home in 1941 and made their first major art purchases as World War II was coming to a close. British painter William James's View of Venice, followed quickly by Sir Joshua Reynolds' Portrait of Mrs. Croft, selections no doubt influenced by Mr. Dixon's English birth. After meeting the great art historian John Rewald in the 1950s, the Dixons' collecting emphasis shifted to French paintings. Rewald wrote the first English language history of Impressionism and, as the Dixons' primary art consultant, guided them to works by Camille Pissarro, Edgar Degas, Alfred Sisley, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Paul Gauguin, and others. Never thinking of themselves as major collectors, the Dixons considered collecting art an investment in pleasure that they enjoyed for the rest of their lives. In Memphis, Mr. and Mrs. Dixon became the city's most dedicated supporters of the arts. They were gracious hosts who opened their home to guests frequently. They were part of a local organization called Arts Appreciation that, among other projects, brought the touring company of the Metropolitan Opera to Memphis every year. Their philanthropic interests range from Southwestern University, now Rhodes College, to Opera Memphis, to the Memphis College of Art and the Memphis Brooks Museum of Art, where from 1960 to 1962, Mr. Dixon served as chairman of its board of trustees, Some of the most significant works of art in the Brooks permanent collection were given to the museum by the Dixons.
Well, I first got together with Hugo Dixon in the 60s when he was running Arts Appreciation. And Arts Appreciation brought the Metropolitan Opera to Memphis every year. My mother and father were great friends of the Dixons, and that's how I sort of met Hugo. And he got me working on Arts Appreciation and made me president of it one year. And so we would always meet over here at his house. And so that's how I first got started with him. And we knew each other well by the time he passed away.
The Dixons were cultural leaders in Memphis for nearly 3 decades. In February 1974, Margaret Oates Dixon passed away after a long illness at the age of 73. Hugo Dixon died in November of the same year, at age 82, just days after an automobile accident put him in the hospital. Within 10 months, Memphis had lost 2 of its most visionary philanthropists and ardent supporters of the arts. By that time, the Dixons had set into motion a plan to transform their private home, gardens, and their collection of fine art into a public institution. Mr. Dixon's longtime friend, Eric A. Katmer, became the first chairman of the Hugo Dixon Foundation and was instrumental in turning the Dixons' private home and estate into a public gallery and gardens. It was a large undertaking. In addition to adding galleries to the Dixon residence, Mr. Katmer oversaw the hiring of a director and a professional staff, creating a set of bylaws for the organization, establishing a board of trustees, and securing accreditation from the American Alliance of Museums.
The museum was founded by some talented men and women in Memphis, and they knew some of the secrets to the success of that, to the success of the museum. They knew, first of all, they were going to have a prominent members of the board of directors. They indeed assembled that kind of group. They also knew that the director must have a strong background in the arts. He must also have contact with many other museum directors around the country and art dealers around the world. They didn't know the third talent that a director of the museum had to have. That's an ability to draw a crowd.
We're one of the only nonprofits that are independently funded and operated.
The Dixon Gallery and Gardens opened to the public in January of 1976, with Michael Milkovich as its first director and Eric Katmer as its founding chairman of the board. The first major exhibition presented at the museum was Mary Cassatt and the American Impressionists, followed closely by Impressionists in 1877. The first Flowers and Art exhibition, precursor to the Memphis Flower Show, took place in 1978, marking the start of the Dixons' partnership with the Memphis Garden Club. That relationship thrives to this day. In 1983, Musa M. Damed became the Dixons' second director. Under his leadership and the continued guidance of Eric Katmer, the Dixon added works of art by Jean-François Raffaelli and Henry Edmund Cross to the collection. In 1985, the Wardis Stevens Stout collection of 18th century German porcelain was bequeathed to the museum, an important group of more than 400 objects that instantly made the Dixon Center for the Study of European Ceramic. Thanks to the dedication of Eric Katmer and many other early supporters, Mr. Dixon's vision already was coming into focus.
I spent 25 years as trustee of both the Dixon and Hugo Dixon board, and it was one of the finest experiences I ever had.
He was just the consummate gentleman, and I think what he has left for the city is tremendously important.
Memphis is really a small city, but we've got big things in the art and intellectual world. I think when you think Memphis has got the Dixon and the Brooks and the Botanical Garden and what we got in theaters, but the Dixon, I think, is a jewel.
It's been something that's been really good for the city of Memphis.
In 1986, as the Dixon celebrated its 10th anniversary, it hired a dynamic young man named John Buchanan to be its third director. At about the same time, Eric Katmer passed the board chairmanship to S. Herbert Ray, a CPA and one of the most influential and resourceful businessmen Memphis has ever known. For 8 years as chairman and 23 as a member of the board, Mr. Ray trained his considerable business acumen on the Dixon. The partnership between John Buchanan and Herbert Ray marked a period of tremendous vitality and invention. The Dixon presented ambitious blockbuster exhibitions including The Passion of Rodin, The World of Toulouse-Lautrec, and Louis XV and Madame de Pompadour, A Love Affair with Style. It was a great moment for the arts in Memphis, and under Buchanan's leadership, the museum flourished. It was also during Buchanan's tenure that the Dixon added the Armand Hammer's gift of 100 lithographs by the 19th century French artist Honoré Daumier. The Adler pewter collection of over 300 decorative and commemorative pieces, and it purchased 54 works by French Impressionist painter Jean-Louis Forain. John Buchanan was recruited to become the director of the Portland Art Museum in 1994, but by then he and Herbert Ray were already negotiating a partial gift, partial purchase of 22 important Impressionist, Post-Impressionist, and Modernist paintings from the celebrated collection of Texas rancher Montgomery Ritchie. The acquisition included works by Monet, Renoir, Pissarro, John Singer Sargent, and Marc Chagall, to name but a few. The Ritchie acquisition elevated the institution to another level of prestige and accomplishment. Almost immediately, works from the Dixon collection were appearing in exhibitions around the world.
I think that it's probably, one of the Southeast's finest art museums. I think it's unique in its collection, both of its horticultural collection as well as its arts collection.
The Dixon plays an important role in educating both young and old on art and the importance of art in our lives. We bring relevant exhibitions to the community that meet the needs not only of the greater Memphis area, but our regional community.
Traveling exhibitions of our collection have been all over the country, thereby bringing attention to Memphis and the arts here in our city.
The late 1990s and early 2000s saw the Dixon continue to flourish, first under director Joseph Chektakowski and later Jake Camp. The two experienced leaders brought creativity and stability to the museum, and such a wide range of exhibitions as Dale Chihuly installations, masterpieces from the Museo de Arte de Sao Paulo, the Devonshire Inheritance, 5 Centuries of Collecting at Chatsworth, and Blue Dog, The Art of George Rodrigue. Jake Camp remains one of the longest tenured directors in the Dixon's history. In 2007, Kevin Sharp became the Dixon's 6th director, and he continues to lead the museum as the Linda W. and S. Herbert Ray director. Sharp and the team he assembled have placed a renewed focus on originating and circulating exhibitions. A turning point came in 2011 when the Dixon joined forces with the Petit Palais in Paris to present the retrospective exhibition Jean-Louis Forain, La Comédie Parisienne. This landmark show demonstrated the Dixon's ability to operate confidently on the largest of international stages.
The favorite Dixon event to me was the Forain exhibition and the gala we had just not too long ago. It brought out a lot of people in the community, was hugely successful. We had international travelers come here and from France and other areas, and it was a tremendous event for the museum and for all of the participants in that event.
It is a premier art institution in the Southeast, and I think that speaks for itself, but I think also it might well be the future of art museums in Memphis.
At the core of the Dixon, we're here to celebrate creativity and originality.
As the Dixon approaches its 40th anniversary, building the fine art collection has again become a priority. In the last few years, major works by the French painter Jacques-Émile Blanche, the American sculptor and icon of the Harlem Renaissance, Augusta Savage, and most recently the contemporary sculptor June Kaneko, have entered a collection that is not only steadily growing, but also growing more diverse. Kaneko's impressive sculpture is one of the first to be purchased for the gardens since Hugo Dixon himself commissioned works in the 1950s and 60s. The 17 acres that comprise the Dixon Gardens have changed significantly in the last 40 years, but their form and structure still follows Mr. Dixon's original plan for the property. The terrace walk leading to the Hughes Pavilion originally brought the Dixons and their guests to a swimming pool. Hughes Pavilion now covers the pool, but it still exists, and the Dixon irrigates the gardens from water captured there. the picnic lawn, the south lawn, the formal gardens, the east lawn, and the Whispering Bench Alley all would be familiar to the Dixons if they were able to return today. These gardens, woodlands, and broad lawns were designed by Hugo Dixon with the assistance of his sister Hope Crutchfield, a talented garden designer. Their correspondence describes an overall plan for both formal and informal garden spaces. Hope Crutchfield and Hugo Dixon envisioned gardens filled with fragrant plants and a sweeping lawn lined with towering trees that stretched southward from the residence. Their designs have been well preserved by Dixon horticulturists during 40 years as a public garden. The first director of horticulture was Ed Toth, and starting in 1987, Diane Reed would lead the gardens in its programming for the next 20 years. During Diane Reed's tenure as director of horticulture, the Dixon introduced a building program that included the Canale Conservatory, the Clark Gard Administrative Building, the Eric A. Cadmer Horticulture Building, the Memphis Garden Club Cutting Garden, and the Farnsworth Fountain. In the cutting garden, staff and volunteers grow the fresh flowers that appear in arrangements in the museum each day. Dale Skaggs became director of horticulture after Reed's retirement in 2007, and the garden's programming only has multiplied under his leadership. With the addition of a renovated plant nursery area, 2 greenhouses built in 2013, and a growing commitment to horticulture-based and sculpture exhibitions on the grounds, the Dixon has become a 21st century public garden.
We have a wonderful collection now, and the garden's always evolving, producing stems, cut flowers that are used at the museum and the residence that are changed out twice a week. And that's paying homage to Margaret Dixon's love of flowers. That was a tradition that's been long held here at the Dixon. We're buying in the best seeds and the best plants from Holland and around the world so that we can have beautiful cut flowers that are Dixon grown in the museum. It's a great way to connect the galleries and the gardens.
Huge, gorgeous oaks and magnificent azaleas, our 150,000 tulips in the spring, the beauty of the whole place is just unbelievable.
And we have one of the top garden facilities. I mean, there's so many people that are now paying attention to gardening, and I think the Dixon is an amazing resource for these people.
I'd say it is very unexpected in Memphis to find a place that has world-class art and a wonderful garden in the reach of a single short walk.
The city of Memphis has many beautiful green spaces, and I think that's one of the interesting things about the city is how green it is, how many trees there are within the city center. And I think some place like the Dixon that can teach us how to deeply know the plants and embrace the native plants around us is a wonderful advocate and also role model for other public places here in the city of Memphis.
Since its founding in 1976, the Dixon has been committed to serving Memphis and the surrounding region through a broad range of education programs. From lectures and workshops by leading authorities in the fields of art and horticulture to Mini Masters, a weekly program that stimulates development in children as young as 2 years old. Additionally, the Dixon creates dozens of unique learning experiences for people of every age group and almost every interest. The Dixon's relationship with its neighborhood, the Shelby County school systems, and the community at large is kept relevant and vital through the museum's education department. For 3/4 of the Dixon's 40-year history, that department has been led by only 2 inspired educators.
And I set up a number of programs at the Dixon. I suppose the one for which I am proudest and which has lasted the longest is Art to Grow, which is an outreach program for children and schools in particular to teach arts concepts to students directly in the classroom.
Art to Grow reaches 20,000 elementary school students every year. At Jane Faquin's retirement in 2007, Margarita Sandino became Director of Education, and she has only made the Dixon more accessible to underserved communities, more vibrant and more enmeshed in the very fabric of the community.
In 2007, one of the first programs that I designed was a program for early childhood. We decided to be a little bit more open and not do a program quarterly, but something that was ongoing, something that would bring families back every week.
the Dixon's willingness, eagerness even, to reach into every neighborhood of this community is part of the DNA of the organization.
Teaching children and adults not only about art in the greater world, but also about gardens and how important keeping our planet safe and growing green things is to the world.
The Dixon education programs bridge the two-pronged mission of the organization, the visual arts and gardening. On any given week, Dixon visitors and members might experience lectures on art or horticulture, gallery tours, artist workshops, gardening workshops, Munch and Learn, family studio, and a host of other creative and inspiring programs. But in addition to these valuable resources, the Dixon has in recent years introduced a number of art therapy programs designed to give comfort and aid to those in our community who need us most. Art therapists at the Dixon have created helpful and nurturing experiences for children suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, for people with Alzheimer's and their caregivers, but also for developmentally challenged adults, and for children living in challenging circumstances.
The Dixon immediately comes in and asks if there's anything they can do, and says hi and welcomes them, and they feel it. They feel real comfortable here.
The Dixon, we're trying to infuse arts into our everyday curriculum, which I really believe is extremely important because not all students learn in the same way.
I'm the art therapist with the Dixon. I do 2 out of 3 of the art therapy programs here. One is mosaics, and we do work with people with dementia, and it's a fantastic program. We just kind of change up the way that people look at art and make up stories about what we think is going on. We'll look at what we think the subject's feeling or thinking or saying, what conversation they might be having if they're at a table somewhere.
So we really appreciate the community services that Dixon offers to our greater Memphis community as a whole.
The Dixon is a place for people of all ages, from children walking through the hallways seeing magnificent creations of art, to watching them walk through the gardens and squealing in delight.
Annual events such as Art on Tap and Art on Fire invite a new energy into the outdoor spaces. Wine tastings, cocktail parties, and opening events allow visitors and members to enjoy the galleries and share unique social experiences while continuing to support the Dixon educational and outreach programs.
I think the main thing Memphians need to know about the Dixon is that we are their Dixon.
And there's just so much more here that people in Memphis can come enjoy.
Your life will be enriched having visited the Dixon, and you'll want to come again and again.
10 years ago, I said that it was a place to improve the quality of life for Memphians and Mid-Southerners.
The one word I use to describe the Dixon is beautiful.
Every corner offers a new view of the world.
This is the most beautiful, peaceful place on earth.
The Dixon is an extraordinary asset for this community and has now been for decades. It is a source of inspiration, an illustration of excellence, a place to learn, a place to feel, a place to experience, and is itself a community.
The whole Mid-South needs, quality cultural attractions, and I think that's really what the Dixon is, and I just think it always uplifts a community.
The Dixon Gallery and Gardens is really an oasis of peace and beauty in the midst of a beautiful world, and for that we are grateful.
Well, I'm involved because I think the Dixon provides some tremendous value to the community in terms of certainly cultural enlightenment, but also education, not just for adults, but the many, many children.
I think all Memphians need to know this museum is here for them. It might have elite art, but there's nothing elite about access to the Dixon or the mission of the Dixon. It's here for each of us.
That Hugo wanted to see something like this develop, and I think it has happened.
I'm very proud to be associated as part of the Dixon.
Hopefully the Dixon is going to be here forever, and 40 years is just a blink of the eye. We're part of something that's still developing, still growing, still inventing itself, still deciding what it's going to be over the long haul, and that's a very exciting thing to be part of. And it's I think one of the joys of being associated with the Dixon at this moment, 40 years into our history.